Hello, Lauren here with Lauren Elizabeth Animal Art, and I create therapeutic animal art tutorials for daily creative quiet time. To kick off my new animal art therapy class tier, the Dachshund tier, as well as my new pet portrait commission course, we will be de-stressing with this 2-dog pet portrait of 2 dachshunds playing in Christmas lights. Now this is part 1 of the tutorial because it's kind of lengthy, but part 2 will come next week. All right guys, let's get painting. Christmas already 8 days away. How could that be? I am just in shock still, but I want to wish you a peaceful, colorful, and bright Christmas this year, friends. Now it's finally here. You can now access all my traceables, reference photos, and material lists for all my YouTube channel tutorials in just one place in my new Doxy tier that I just opened last Wednesday. Then for you aspiring or current pet portrait artists, I've also just released my new pet portrait commission course in the Maine Coon and Stallion tier of my online animal art masterclass. You can find a link to all my animal art therapy classes in the description box below. Now for today's creative quiet time verse, we'll be meditating on Psalms 119, 105. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. When I read this verse, I think of a lighthouse. It's there to help us, not to hurt us. Like a lighthouse, the word can be that bright light that guides us through the dark, scary waters to safety. Or like a fireplace in a dark forest, the word can protect us by being able to see danger. Or like a well-lit Christmas tree, the word can fill us with joy, excitement, and anticipation for the good things to come. Now, as we're painting together, I encourage you to take 5 deep breaths in and out and turn off all that anxiety, all that worry. Just focus on this verse and the painting in front of you. All right, so I'm going to dampen my large flat brush. This is size 11 flat brush. I want to make sure it's clean and damp. And we're going to start working on the background. We're going to create a red blanket. I think I'm going to add like a pattern on the red blanket and then having a light green background. And don't mind this line, all these sketch lines. We're going to paint right over that, and we're going to use this green background to paint around the antlers and just right above this line right here to about there. So I'm going to create a bluish green with my turquoise. This is my aqua green. I'm going to mix in a little bit of grass green in there. That's grass green, cadmium yellow, and white. I want this to be kind of a medium to light green, and we want to make a good amount of it, and I'm going to go in with more yellow and some more white because that's a bit darker than I want it. Okay, let's test this out. I just saw a little bristle in there. I want to make sure I get that out. You know, I'm going to add in more yellow, and I'm also going to add in more white. Okay, I like that. Okay, so I'm just going to set that aside. I'm going to I'll move to my size 6 flat brush. And I'll work around those antlers and around the ears. And don't forget about your sides. And it's all right if you go over your sketch. You just want to make sure you cover up all those little white specks in the background. I might have to mix up some more because it looks like I'm getting real close to the end of this color. So I'm going to get more yellow on my palette. And that was a little bit of grass green, my aqua green with lots of yellow and a good amount of white. Now this part is actually part of his ear. So be careful that you don't cut that off as you're painting around it because it's kind of confusing right there. All right, so while we let the green background dry, because we're going to work on those antlers after we do the blanket, but we want to mix up our red for this blanket that's laying over top the dogs and behind it. I'll use orange with some permanent red, and the brush I'm using is size 6 flat brush. And I'm just going to first work from back to front. I will be painting over some of those lines, like the lines that show the overlap of the cloth. And this is that puppy's part of his foot, part of his leg. All right, and again, your sides, don't forget those. And next we're gonna create a brown for those antlers. I think I might go back and forth between my size 4 round brush and my size 1 round brush, but I'll mix with this size 4 round brush, and I'll use a deep brown. So I love to create a dark brown with black and raw sienna. I just feel like that makes a real natural looking brown as opposed to just taking one color straight out of the tube. So we'll use that deep brown to paint all 4 antlers. I'll start with this one. And as for the lights, I didn't even draw them in because we're going to add those very last. After we've painted both dogs, that's when we'll add the lights, because I want to have these lights layering around and over top parts of the dog. So it wouldn't make sense to paint them now. Now this antler is behind. We see the bottom part of this one because it's closer to us, but this one, we just see the top of it. We don't see the bottom of it. All right, I'm going to mix up a little bit more for this right dog's antlers. I'm going to move to my size 1 round brush because I want to round out the ends of the antlers, all the little points. I want to make them a little bit more rounded than pointy. And then the color that I'm going to use for that headband, I don't think I want to use black because we're already going to use real darks for the both dachshunds. And then we don't want to use brown because I feel like that would just be too much brown on that. I want to make it look like an accessory, not actual antlers. So I'm going to use a red. I'm going to go in with a red and I'll use my permanent red. And then I will also use some orange. I'll just not add as much orange as I did for the blanket so it can keep a little bit darker and stand up over top that nice green. And the brush I'm using is the size 1 round brush, and I'm just going to paint on both of the headbands that are connected to those antlers. Now this one goes over the side of his head. I painted over it a little bit with my green background. we're going to mix all different types of gray to create the plaid stripes in the blanket. So I'm going to use my size 6 flat brush, and I'm going to create a medium gray with my white and black. Alright, because I want this blanket to look like it's flowing, I'm first going to start with this front layer, and then I'm going to work on the back one. So I'm going to create stripes that are about the same width from one another in this direction, at this angle. So I'm just using the width of my flat brush, my size 6 flat brush, and here's where I'm going to go off along this original sketch line that we made, that we painted over. And then I'm going to do another one that is going the other direction. All right, so same color, we're going to go out this way, and then where it intersects, we're going to create black boxes. So I'm going to take my size 1 round brush, and with just black, I'm going to find the areas where this gray is overlapping, and I'm going to create little boxes. Now, even if my thick gray lines overlapped a little more than I wanted them to, I still created a little box at the overlap.
Gaze upon the sky, Christmas on my mind, somewhere from a place up high above. There's a song of love traveling afar, seeking us to warm up every heart, to be our light into the night. Bless us with a moment special star shining from afar, seeking us to warm up every heart, to be our light into the night. Bless us with a moment of serenity. Let it come.
Now don't forget to bring those stripes and boxes down over your sides. All right, so next we're going to work on the eyes, mouth, and the nose using black. And I'm going to use still using my size 1 round brush. Using just a small amount of black paint, I'm going to outline the nose, mouth, and eyes. Then I'm going to fill in what I see of the pupils, the nostrils, and then anything we need to include inside that left dog's mouth. I actually see a really dark shadow on the left dog's nose, and I'm going to fill that in while I'm working on the right dog's nose. And I'll just work on the left dog's nose while I'm here. Now I'm going to outline the right Doxy's mouth, but then we're going to do a little bit more on the left dog's mouth because it's open. to do a bit more on the left dog's eyes because I want to make him look over more than I have it. Okay, so now the mouth is going to be real dark inside, so I'm going to outline around those teeth, but I'll stop about here for that mouth. Oh, I painted over that tooth, but that's okay. And now for the eyes on the left dog. Because of the glare, we hardly see a pupil there. I can put a little pupil there, and then we can have a nice kind of a glazed gray to go over top both eyes for those highlights. There's just this line on that dog's nose, and below it we'll add a highlight. And then there's a really strong shadow. It's like a very boxy looking nose these dachshunds have. And then a line that goes up it. So lots of black on that one. While I'm working on these noses, I just want to finish the outline on the left dog's nose. All right, so let's add a little bit of color to both the eyes and the noses and the mouth. I'm going to add yellow ochre with some white for the right dachshund's eyes. That's yellow ochre with white. I'm going to make them a little lighter than what I'm seeing in the reference photo. Actually, I am going to go smaller. This is a really small detail brush that I grabbed. I knew I would have to use them because of how tiny this is. This is not an Arteza brush. This is a Princeton brush 18-0, very small. And I'm going to fill in as much as I can around that pupil. We have some white on both eyes, but the color iris part is on the left of this left eye. And then I'll mix up a very light gray for the white part of both eyes. Very little gray, or little black for that light gray. All right, I'm going to touch up that black. We have quite a lot of black to touch up. Such a tiny little space. And I will go in with a darker, I'm going to add raw sienna to this yellow ochre and white. I'll add raw sienna to that, and I'll paint that in on the left dog's eye. And then once those dry, we're going to add that really bright gray highlight and the white highlights as well. So your eyes might look a little funky right now, but just wait. When we add those highlights, that'll make a huge difference. I'm going to go back to my size 1 round brush because we want to work on the nose. I'm not going to make these noses blue like I usually do because we're going to add so many lights and we're going to make the dog color so abstract, which is why I will just use my black and white, stick with a realistic dark nose. Now, as you're mixing and testing colors, you want to make sure you can see that over top that black outline. So you want it a dark gray, but lighter than the black outline. And basically, I'm going to fill in all the white as best I can. I might even have to go back to that smaller brush. All right, so that's all I'm going to do for that gray. And now I'm going to add more white to get those highlights. We see some strong highlights on the right side because our light source is coming from this side. And it's hitting the very top above that black line we made, which is going to be kind of wet, so we might need to add a few layers. And that line kind of reaches around the nose, reaches up. Again, we might have to go back with a lighter gray because that mixed in because it's wet, but I'm going to try my best to touch up some of that black again with my real small brush. So with this brush, I'm going to just grab straight white because I don't want to lose those highlights up top. There we go. And below. So below, above that nostril and below it. I'm actually going to take out, I pulled that black out too much, so I'm going to pull that back out again, and that makes more sense. Same color, same idea. I'm going to use this small brush again for the left nose, and I'm going back to that medium gray that we can see over top the, oh, that's even still a little too dark, so I'm going to add in a little bit more white to that because I don't want to lose my outline around that nose. Now here's something that you'll need a real small brush for. There's a really strong light highlight beneath the nose, but under that highlight is this dark gray that leads into that shadow. See that? If you look close enough, you'll see that real light highlight under the nose. So now I'm going to go in with white and add that highlight in right below, right above that line below the nose. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to extend out that gray, which goes longer up the snout. All right, moving down, I'm going to work on those teeth. These teeth are pretty darn, these are healthy looking dogs. They've got some pearly white teeth. I'm still going to make a very light gray and not just use straight white. Same tiny brush. And those eyes might be about ready. Those eyes are ready. So why don't we use that light gray that we just used for the teeth to paint the highlights into the eyes. It's just right over top. It's a lot on both eyes because of the strong glare. And more like little dots on the other eye. I'm going to do about 2 dots on the other eye, and then a real strong highlight above the pupil on the right eye. And then for the dog on the left, Let's try something. I'm just going to cover up the top part of the eye, even into that pupil. And I think that's what we'll end up doing. So we can sort of see that pupil still, but it's covered up quite a bit by that highlight. Moving on, we're going to add the darkest values in the dachshunds. We're going to start, and because they're like the same colors, I'll just apply it to both the dogs at the same time, starting with our darks. And I want to start with a purple, a violet, and I'm going to use my size 4 round brush for this. So that's violet with a bit of black for our darkest value that we're going to add. That's a little bit of black, lots of violet. All right, so now you're going to have to follow me closely. Take your time here. But I'm applying this color to all the areas that I see jet black and a really dark gray in a reference photo. I won't apply this to anywhere I see dark brown or light brown or even a light gray or even a medium gray. Now, if I get it in one of those areas, that's totally fine. We can always layer over top the correct value. We want to be very generous with this step because the next layer is going to be a little bit lighter, and it's going to layer slightly, partially over top these colors. It's like building a painting in all these different layers, moving from our darks to medium to light values. I'm going to add in a little bit more black into this color. I was so stumped here when I was trying to figure out where I was going to end that little dachshund and start the blanket. But you'll see in a few minutes that I actually brought this dark value down too far. I then decide with red, my permanent red, and a little bit of orange to create this dark red triangle in between these two puppies. So if you want to, with this color, section off a little triangle there so you can fill it in with red later. Now this part is a part of the blanket, and so to not throw me off anymore, I'm just going to grab some red. I can always fix that up later. So that's permanent red and my orange, the colors that we use for the blanket. And we want that pretty dark, so make sure you add a lot of red. And just so I don't get confused, I'm going to pull that up over top some of that purple. It's pretty darn dark with all that purple, but I'll go over that again once it's dry. All right, so now I'll go back to my darks. You want to make sure you have enough of this paint mixture to apply to the left dog. Before we move on to those medium values, we'll just continue on with the dark values in the left dog as well. So again, that's a little bit of black with violet. All right, so here we go, applying our darkest values to the left doggy. Again, take your time. And I had a little bit of difficulty around the chest and ear, trying to figure out where those darkest values belong. At any point, you can switch brushes to get into the little tiny areas, as well as pausing if I'm going too fast.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll talk a cup of kindness yet for days of old lang syne. And here's a hand, my trusty friend, and here's a hand of thine. We'll talk a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. For Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll talk a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne, for old lang syne.
All right, so for our next colors, we're going to create our medium value now, which is just a little bit lighter than the dark values that we added. And let's get crazy with our violet. We're going to make this really obvious, a real obvious purple. So I'm just going to add a little bit of white to this because we don't want to make it too light. And I'm going to add a little bit of that black in there so it's still kind of got that shade of gray in there. So I'm going to, that's violet, white, and black. Okay, so same thing, but I'm going to now hug all the darkest values that we've just applied. We're going to give them a good hug. I hear quite often artists having so much trouble finding where those medium values belong. Well, if you applied your darkest values in all the right places, all you need to do then is right next to them, like I said, a hug, you're going to layer over top that medium value, just not covering completely the previous dark value. You'll notice that I leave some areas white, and that's either because it should be a light gray or a brown, or I didn't add enough of my dark value to that area, and I'll go back to cover that up with my darks later. All right, for the face, we're going to go a shade lighter. So I'm going to add in more white. Now here, I just went straight to my lighter values before I added the medium values to the left dog. That's not something that you have to do. This is just me wanting to make sure that I don't lose track of all my values in this one dog. It's pretty confusing. So while I'm on it, I'm just going to work from my dark, medium, lights all in one time. I'm going to need to go to my smaller brush. I'm not going to go to my smallest brush, but I'll go to my size 2 filbert brush. Applying the same light purple, but we're getting a little bit smaller here with tiny little areas, so I'm moving to a smaller brush. Oh, that wasn't supposed to be there. All right, now before I move on to my light values, I'm going to go back over and touch up some of the darkest values that maybe I left out or I went over with my purple. So for instance here, this is actually supposed to be darker. Sometimes you can see them a lot easier when you've already applied the medium value. Sometimes they're just a bit more visible. Oh, there's actually a dark value that we missed right there along the chest. For instance, this is supposed to be real dark, so I'm going to go over that. All right, so now let's get a little bit lighter. I will move to my small round brush. This is my size 1 round, and I'll add white to that previous purple that we were using. I'm going to add a little bit more violet in there and more white. I had a little trouble with the face, especially because I painted over those little orange spots on the eyebrows. It threw me off, but I'm going to paint like normal, filling in all the areas where I see a light gray. Then when we mix up those light browns for the both dogs, I'll fill those eyebrows in. Notice I'm just doing little dabs. We do a lot of filling in with our dark values, a little bit less filling in and more detail with our medium values, and then little tiny dabs doing lots of detail with our lighter values. If you notice in our reference photo, that chest area on the right dachshund is darker than the area on the face. And so I'm adding in more violet to darken this purple up, the purple that we used for the highlights on the face. So be careful that you're not making that chest area too light. All right, now I'm going to touch up some of those areas on the right dog that should have been a dark value that I might have missed or just gone over with my lighter values. So that's violet with a little bit of black and my round detail brush size 1, and I'll just touch up those areas. All right, so everything we just did to that right dachshund with our violets and blacks and whites, we're going to repeat on the left dog, going from our medium values, because we already have our dark values on there, to our light values, and then we'll also touch up those darker values. So for our next layer on that left dog, I'm going to mix up violet, white, and a tiny, tiny bit of black. All right, so I'm moving to my size 1 round brush by Arteza, and I'm definitely in desperate need of going back over my darker values before I move on to my lights. And so that's violet with a good amount of black. And notice on this dog, more than the right dog, we see a little bit more fur texture. So between my darker values and my medium and light values, I'm going to add a bit more of that fur texture by clustering lines together closely. All right, so now I'm going to mix up the color for my light values on the purple area. So that's just going to be more white into the medium paint mixture we were using, that medium purple. And for all the areas that I see a light gray on the left dog with little dabs and clusters of lines, I'm going to be adding this light purple. Now, if there's any areas of this highlight that you need to add to the right dog, go for it. That's what I did here. And we have reached the end of part 1, guys. All right, so I will be posting part 2 next week if it's not already there, and I really hope that you enjoy it. Please leave any comments down below if you have any questions for me, and make sure you check out my new Doxy tier. That's also linked down below. Have a blessed holiday, guys. Bye.